Hey, thanks for coming back to the show. If you're anything like me, you acknowledge that 2025 is going to require a different version of you, a more skilled version, a more effective version, a more, dare I say, empathetic person to every situation, circumstance you walk into. No editing, I don't care. The point is simply this. This year is about you getting better, not just the market improving, but you getting better. And I thought no one better to help us do this than my speech coach, Terri Sjodin. You probably read her book. It's extraordinary. If you haven't, I'm going to grab it right here and tell you this should be on your list, because last time I checked, you and I, we get paid in direct correlation to our ability to communicate effectively and persuasively in a way that ultimately causes someone to say yes. And if they're going to say no, say it fast. So Terri, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom, for having me back.
Second time on the podcast. So Terri, we want to go deep. And of course, my main man, Jason Pantana over here.
I'm here.
We want to go deep into the latest round of the research. And then I want to get very tactical, the three of us together, on what someone has to do in order to become effective. And before you share with us the research, I want to state the obvious to my friend. Two people go on an appointment. They come from the same company. They offer the same splits. They offer the same pricing. They offer the same track record. One person wins and one person loses. And I believe what Terri's about to teach you is the difference between the person that won and the person that lost. So I hope I have your 100% attention. Terri, for maybe the person that doesn't understand your backstory, maybe give them just a little bit of insight, and let's get right into the meat of it.
Sure. So I've spent the last 30 years of my life helping people to build and deliver more polished and persuasive presentations. I do that from a very pragmatic approach. I help people on the ground at the field level, and then I've also done formal academic research that gives you a cumulative perspective on how to craft a more compelling message.
Yes. So give them an example of, and you've shared this with me before, but I think it's important for the listener to get it. How many salespeople have you interviewed? And how much data have you collected? And more importantly, what were the insights from the data before we get into the sausage making?
Sure. So I've been doing this for almost going a little over 25 years. Mm-hmm. And over that time, there were these common things that came up that people self-reported were costing them a win or a deal or an opportunity.
Right.
And so I went into a deep dive research project in partnership with San Diego State University, where we asked that question. Looking back, we asked 5,000 sales professionals in 3 phases on a multi-year study. Is there something that you think you did that cost you a win or a deal or an opportunity over the last 6 months? And 94% of the participants said yes. Mm-hmm. And then we asked them specifically, okay, thank you for your transparency. What were those things?
Yes.
And that surfaced these 12 common mistakes that live under 3 dominant benchmarks.
Yes. So let's talk about the 3 most common mistakes. And for my friend listening, listen through the ears of, she's got a lot of data, and a lot of people like you and I and Jason and have said, yeah, I screwed up, and this is where I screwed up. So what are the top 3?
So it begins with the 3 benchmarks.
Yes.
The first benchmark, where people look at their own presentations and say, I think there was something I did. Mm-hmm. Live under what we call the house of case, how you built your persuasive case. Mm-hmm. That includes your arguments. That includes the way that you draft the message in terms of its logical argumentation. And it includes use of time and how did you specifically close or ask at the end of a presentation. The second benchmark.
But first, you know how I interpret that? I think about it as, can you annihilate an objection with data, stats, and stories before the objection arises? And do you actually close?
Oh, I love that you just said that, because there is a differentiation.
Please.
In your case, you're talking about the evidence points.
Correct.
That's for the person who might be very left brain, linear, logical. They want the data, the reports, the ROI.
Yes.
That's different from that second benchmark, which is creativity. That's where you go into storytelling, anecdotes, humor, use of visual aids, like all of the little things that bring the story to life. Mm-hmm. That lives under the house of creativity. And then the third benchmark is your delivery. the way you speak, your eye contact, your body language, the way you might smile here and there, the way you seem like you're engaged and truly listening to what the person is saying.
Yes.
All of that lives under the house of delivery. So you could have a wicked case, but your creativity is light. Or you could have a great delivery, but you have no case, right? So those 3 benchmarks then help us to reveal what the specific issue is on your message.
Are you making the argument that the person listening right now needs to have all 3 of those in alignment?
Yes, we all
They
have our
can't just
strengths.
be dominant in one?
You can be, but it'll be effective with only a portion of your audience.
And that's like I'm really good with the data. So I talk about the data, but you're
Right.
talking to someone like myself who doesn't even read contracts, who hires, hey, read the contract, make sure we're good. Okay, cool. All signed, boom, done. My wife, on the other hand, reads the entire contract. If you're essentially pitching to both of us,
Yes.
you need to make sure you're talking to me my way and
love
her
that.
her way. Is that what we're saying?
Well, yes. And there is science behind that. So
Yes.
Aristotle, in his rhetorical triangle,
Yeah.
let me give you the fun part of that bit of
Yes.
information is that we all come to a presentation and we listen to it through our own lens.
Sure.
So some people have ethos, which is ethics, credibility, your backstory.
Yes.
Some is logos, which is logic,
Yeah.
and then pathos, which is heart.
Yes.
And so, just like you were saying, when you're sitting with someone, you might be logos dominant. And Jason's presenting to you from a very heartfelt place. You are not. He's not going to land with
said
you.
no one ever.
Wouldn't
Right.
have happened. It wouldn't have happened.
Might be the other way around.
The other way around.
Yes. Yes.
Or it could be that I care about somebody's credibility. I want to know that they have street cred. I want to know that they've been in my market for 25 years. I don't care if you're touchy-feely, and I don't need the numbers.
Yeah.
I want to know that you're competent and successful.
Yeah.
When you're looking at a presentation, there are so many dynamics to leveling it up,
Yes.
but none of this would matter unless you're already here. Right? You have
so
to
what do
be
you-
at a certain place before you can start to level up to the next place.
So I have a question. So
Okay.
you're going through these 3 elements. So it was the case, it was the creativity, and then it's the delivery.
Correct.
And I've heard you talk before about the ethos, pathos, logos. And I got to tell you, I went through a workshop and it changed my thinking.
Yay.
I started paying attention to how audiences react when other speakers are presenting. And in my brain, I'm going, because I'm very logos, very dominant on logos. So I'll watch Tom, I'll go, oh, he's doing pathos right now. And then I'll watch the room react and I'm like, oh, it's really effective, how well that works. I am assuming there's a level of, it's not A, B, C, it's more of a dance between navigating between these
Perfect.
3 elements. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
You don't always know what the dominant is. So let's look at that from 2 perspectives. The first one is we have a tendency to present in whatever is our dominant.
Yes.
Right. So if you're a logos, you probably present
figures.
with more logos. If
Let me
you're
give you way
pathos,
more information than you need right now.
Because it's awesome.
Because I love all the data.
and if
I'm like,
you're
let me tell you
logos-
another story.
And we know that if
Exactly.
you are presenting to a logos and you're presenting from as a pathos,
Yeah.
you may not connect with them. So what's the best takeaway? And the best takeaway is to have a lovely balance of all 3. When you look at your talk and say, do I have quality pathos, quality logos, and
Yeah.
quality ethos? And if you have all 3, then you're in pretty good shape. You'll be safe. It's a safe bet.
Terri, for the person listening, they could be recruiting someone as a team leader. They could be on a listing appointment, meeting with a buyer, negotiating a contract, or they could just be like having a conversation with some friends, or they could be asked, hey, could you get up in front of an audience and tell your story? Does it apply to all of it?
It does apply to all of it. And we all have a little bit, we all make decisions, including all 3. I mean, it's not that I don't care about pathos if I'm a logos. Of course I care.
Yes.
You
Just
care
a
about
little.
the credibility.
Yes.
You care about all 3. We just have a dominant. And so when you're communicating, whether it's one-on-one, small group, or large group, we don't always have the luxury of knowing who we're speaking to.
Correct.
And so with that information, the greater probability that you're going to hit the largest amount of connecting points, the better.
Yes. So let's talk about back to the research. 5,000 salespeople, multiple years,
Yes.
pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, post-pandemic.
Correct, with
right?
the
So you
supplement.
really got 3 very different things happening in the world, if you will.
Yes.
What were the 3 biggest mistakes? And then let's talk about the 3, 4, 7, 10 things that we can all start working on together, as you've done with us, to help everybody present more effectively.
So beautiful question. The first thing I always want everyone to know is how wide ranging the audience was that we pulled the data from.
Yes.
Because people always want, like, who was in the audience?
Right.
So we pulled from individuals who sell a product, a service, or a cause. We crossed multiple generations, including the silent generation, baby boomers, Gen Xers, Gen Y millennials, and Gen Z.
Is this the only study that has done of those 5 when it comes to sales and influence?
As far as we know.
I can't think of any. Yeah.
It's very specific.
Yes.
And to have that longitudinal element is pretty powerful.
Right.
You can see which things stay the same, which are foundational, and then what nuances have shifted. And then the biggest takeaway, I think, for me was to see the generational shift in terms of who's in the audience.
Yes.
So the difference between, for example, phase 1, which was pre-pandemic, we still had a very large portion of the silent generation, which is born prior to 1946. And you might think, well, who's in that generation? But if you consider Donald Trump, President Joe Biden, all of those individuals, Bill Clinton, right? They're all silent. It doesn't mean that they're not making decisions. They're fully engaged. My mentor, Harvey McKay, he's silent. However, look at Gen Z. Now they're entering the market. And if you were to fast forward to the end of the 3rd supplement phase, we're seeing that there's just about the same, a little bit of a nuance, just about the same numbers of representation in Gen Z as there are of the silent generation in making up of Congress.
Wow. That's fascinating.
So that's who you're speaking to every day.
TikTok versus faxes. That's how I interpret that.
And it could all be in your room.
Sure.
So the information that we're sharing will help you to be effective, regardless of if you're presenting to somebody who is from Gen Z all the way through silent, whether somebody in their occupation sells a product, service, or cause. Yeah. And then also, thinking about how we're forecasting, this brings me to takeaway number 2 in the supplement. It's that the data is very similar to phase 3 in parts 1 and part 2, which tells us from a scientific perspective that we've reached sustainability. We can count on this. You can lean into it and go, okay, this isn't just a fad. Things are calming down. They're leveling out. And if you take the information that we're sharing with you in this book, it's going to give you a fast track, and it will be applicable for quite a long time.
Terri, I've been doing this for 35 years. I'm about to turn this off because I just have so much information in my head. I can just show up with anybody, anytime, anywhere, and I kill it every time.
Which leads us to the number 1 biggest mistake.
Tell us.
Again, we don't know. It's tied. So in the supplement, number 1 and number 2 were tied. But the top 3 biggest mistakes that most people self-confessed are failing to close the sale, being overly informative versus persuasive, and winging it.
Ooh. For 99% of the listeners, maybe you. So failing to close the sale. So what do you think? That's not a close, right?
No, a close.
That's not asking for the order. That's not asking to be hired.
A close is a specific call to action, what you want the listener to do as a result of your message, paired with what you will be doing to execute the transaction.
Okay, I love it. Fun fact, if you're watching this right now on YouTube, will you type down below and let us know, be honest, how many times do you ask for the order? How many times do you ask? And is there a specific language pattern that you use? I was teaching my son the other day, who his close was kind of like, so what do you think? And I was like, I want you to go right now to YouTube and type in Brian Tracy 24 most effective closes, right? Like old school. Like it's when like Brian Tracy had dark hair.
I love it.
And it's, the library close, the if close, the alternative choice close. And I said, not that I want you actually to use any of those, but if you have that as a baseline, you understand what it means to ask.
You have an awareness.
You have awareness.
Of where to employ those tools.
So
the number 1 response we see on video is, so do you have any questions?
The worst question ever.
That is not a close. But the majority of the videos we watch on playback, that's how people end a presentation.
Now, for my friend listening, think about it. So if I say to you, do you have any questions? Where does your brain go?
No.
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 You know where my brain goes? Automatically, should I have questions?
And then the follow-up to that is, okay, well, I'll give you guys a chance to think about it. And when you're ready to make a decision, let me know.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you could see the number of tapes. Recordings.
Right. And now some people, they will say, I have a complex offer, or I have a 2-step listing appointment. The first time I come in, I meet with them, I build rapport, and I look at the property and But there is still a way along the way. And I know like every rock star that's watching this that does a 2-step is going to say, the whole time I'm earning trust, I have credibility. When I put the home on the market, we're going to need to do this. When we actually, go to market, and it's all very assumptive in their language.
Right.
But for the person that, be honest, if you're not asking for the order, it's like getting up to bat.
Yeah.
The bases are loaded. It's the bottom of the ninth. There's 2 outs. Bases are loaded. And you let the pitcher throw 3 strikes and you never swing.
Well, and I think if you're at a listing presentation, for example, I would make the guess that for a lot of folks who don't close, it boils down to they didn't really declare the purpose they were there for in the first place, which goes back to like building the case, I think. Hey, we're here to talk about listing and selling your home, so that when you've gone through the whole process, you should be able to say something as simple as the next step is to blank and fill in the blank because you're there for that specific purpose.
Yes.
So I wonder I'd be curious, how does setting up the case tee you up for making the close when you're maybe at an appointment or for somebody who's presenting in some way?
It's a great question, and it's all integrated. But I want to go to the heart of what people say when you ask them, why didn't you close?
Mm-hmm.
And they're watching their own playback on video, and they're watching it. And you say, why didn't you close? And there's something they say consistently.
What is it?
I don't want to be a hard sell.
Really?
And I think that there's a very logical, very clean, very elegant way to deliver a close without being hard sell. And so they'll say, what is it? And I say, forget the gimmick. Like, you don't need a crazy gimmick. People say, what do you say? I say, would you like to move forward?
That's like,
There it is.
Are you ready to move forward? Like, that's.
Would you like to move forward?
Yes. Is there an in between? Are you ready to move forward? Would you like to move forward? Does it make a difference? Because I think it's just a move forward.
I think that's an interesting question. Let's play with ready.
Yeah.
Are you ready to move forward? That makes you
I don't know if I'm ready.
right?
Maybe-
Or if you say, would you like to move forward?
I'm going with yours. Would you like to move forward?
I would like
Would you
to.
I'm like, do you want to move forward? Would you like to move forward? I just say it as a friend.
Yeah.
Would you like to move forward?
Yeah. You guys ready to move forward? I don't know. I don't know why I keep putting ready in there. So
I actually think ready takes me back into analysis. Should I be ready? Am I ready? Have I really done everything I should be to be ready?
Yeah, I want to.
Yes.
I want him to go, yeah, I want to.
But do I want to? Would I like to? Absolutely.
Okay, so the first mistake they make is they don't ask for the order. And I go back to the early days of my sales career. I used to play the 7-penny game. Now,
Okay.
it was all over the phone. And I know when you're on the phone, oftentimes we make the same mistakes. We don't ask for the appointment. We don't ask for permission to follow up, whatever it may be, whatever the ask is, we just don't ask. And I was taught, I don't know who created this, and it was probably some maniacal, crazy sales trainer, but it was to have 7 pennies on your desk at all times. And when you asked, you had to move a penny across. And the game was, how many times did you have to move the penny across before they finally said, you're good. Okay. All right. I'm ready. I was just messing with you. Let's go. Or do you
not
actually
familiar
get the
with the penny
7
game.
and heaven forbid, I was never hung up on, but like, I'm sure that could be an option if you were just stupid and obnoxious. What's the recommendation besides would you like to move forward? Is there any other recommendation to arm them? This year is going to require a different version of themselves. Interest rates are in flux. We have a new president in Canada. It's an election year. There's a lot happening that causes people to be in your head. So if I present it well and I understand where they're at and I ultimately get to the moment of truth and I don't ask, is there any other insight you have around that?
We are no longer in a time where you can use a one-size-fits-all presentation and think that you're going to meet the needs of all of the different people that you're speaking to.
Yes.
So I feel like the key component when I'm coaching somebody for a specific message is to make sure you're tuned into, and this touches back to Jason's question, which is, does the front end tie to the back end? The answer is yes. The variable is on the visualization step.
Yeah.
And we talk about this a lot in our events together. But at the point of decision making, the thing that makes somebody want to move forward is they have to see the future. They have to be able to imagine that the place that you're taking them to feels better than where they are today, or they're not going to go.
Yes.
So when you ask me, does the beginning tie to the end? The answer is yes, if the beginning opens with, what are your goals? What are your intentions? And if I had a magic wand and I could help you get there, what does it look like at the end of that transaction? And then they tell you what to go for.
Right.
If you listen to that and your presentation is the through line is helping them accomplish the magic line, line that gets them from where they are to where they want to be, and you show them through ethos, logos, pathos, using Monroe's motivated sequence, it gives you flexibility. You can use a consultative approach. You can use a much more specific, targeted messaging strategy. All of those apply, but the through lines have to focus on what does that listener want to see happen as a result of your time together if they're going to say yes.
Yeah.
Two things that are going through my head. First, the first time we heard through line,
Yep.
we would do this naturally, but it was as a presenter to be able to say, okay, what is the message I'm getting across from point A to point B? That line that I'm going to say throughout the entire. And if you've seen me speak live before, you've experienced this. Last year it was charge the storm or whatever it may be. Like there's this through line you carry through. That's a very powerful one. But I bet 99% of the room watching right now, maybe in a small meeting or running on the treadmill, Monroe's what?
Yeah,
Motivated
that's a bigger
sequence.
topic for a different day, but it's
No,
a sequence.
you can't. Just give it to them quick. Just high level, or they can Google it. But high level, what's the concept?
So Monroe was a strategist and a theorist in persuasive messaging. And he said that for an adult to change their mind, to go from one sequence to another, they have to go through a 5-step process. And that's when you hit those 5 steps, then the person is more likely to feel not manipulated, but logically inclined to make a decision.
And what are the 5 steps?
Well, they're going to sound so trite, but they're the attention step. And the attention step is not about having a pithy quote or some sort of story. It has an awakening.
Yes.
It makes people say,
Yes.
oh, I've heard this before, but the way you're saying it's kind of
perspective.
landing in my mind in a different way.
Yeah.
Then there's the need step, which answers the call of all skeptics. Why do I need you?
Yeah.
Then there's the satisfaction step, which most people are good at, telling you who I am and what I do and how I do it and blah, 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 right? That's all lives in the house of satisfaction. But satisfaction is supposed to support the need step.
That's right.
Then the visualization step, which is step 4. And that helps the listener to visualize where you're taking them and how the future gets brighter when they move forward. And then the action step is what do you want the listener to do as a result of the message? And that's paired with what you will do to, of course, carry the ball across the finish line.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Did you get all that? I think you're going to want to Google that later or maybe go to
And it's
Perplexity.
all
your
in
favorite.
presentation ready.
Right. I think that is definitely Hector, that was the clip.
So it's funny. I was meeting with a friend the other day who had a business idea, and I've been through your training, Terry, and I've heard about Monroe's motivated sequence.
Hell, mate.
And yeah, I went through it, and I led my friend through the Monroe's motivated sequence in terms of crafting his messaging for his idea, and he was like speechless, stunned at how. I mean, you said it sounds trite. It doesn't. It's not trite
At all.
Okay.
It's logical.
Because
Because
most people
there's so
start.
much
Most people go
deeper.
right at number 3.
They do.
Hi, I am. Let me tell you what I'm doing. I'm really excited. Versus creating some level of awareness, getting their needs
takes
analysis,
time.
or maybe reaffirming because you did a prequal.
You're creating the
before you got
case.
there.
The needs is creating the case
I'm
for
here,
what you do.
I'm here for a reason.
Yes. And that helps people to go, wow, I am being overly informative because I am not following this track.
Yes.
And that full circle moment when you say to me, where are the weaknesses? I think winging it and being overly informative versus persuasive and failing to close the sale, I think all 3 of them are tied and they
Yeah.
all live under the house of case. And we haven't even touched what happens in the creativity or
Yeah.
the delivery parts that can throw you off. So every one of these little things gives you a place to strategically begin to course correct, to elevate your skill set in 2025.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, I also think what you said earlier, where you're at an appointment, a listing appointment, and you ask the questions to the seller, hey, what's most important to you? What's been your experience? You did some fact finding. I would wager that a lot of folks who are overly informative because they don't know where to focus their attention. But if you just listen to the needs, you would know this is where I need to live in terms of highlighting and emphasizing my value proposition.
Right.
So that's great insight.
I think
Thank
about
you.
how many times I've been pitched, and I use that word with love, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I'm not going to name this person because she might be listening. So she helps us with some financial stuff, and I call and say, example, hi, I need more insurance. Okay, cool. So, all right. So, Tom, I want to explain to you. And I mean, I'm literally sit there and like the first meeting, I was very polite. The second meeting, I was like, I just need more insurance. I want this much. Tell me how much, and I'll sign the paperwork.
Yeah.
I think the mistake that we make is we put a tape in our head of it's time to do a listing appointment. It's time to do a buyer consultation. And we forget, who am I sitting in front of? what's most important to them, asking those early questions, and then delivering that in a way that is compelling and right for them to ultimately make it as time sensitive or as long as they need to ultimately move forward. And that's the flexibility. And every veteran knows, because they're watching this and they're saying yes. And as a veteran myself, I also know I have too much information inside my head, and I can sometimes answer a question that takes 4 days.
And
how do I stop that?
Specificity of your arguments. What specifically are you going to do that's going to help them get to point A, B, or C?
Okay.
And that's what takes a long time.
How does that relate to a real estate agent?
So I'm going back to her example of, you're asking the questions of, hey, what's most important to you? What time frames or deliverables do I need to be thinking about? What are the moving parts? Who else are you talking to? Blah, blah. Just all that fact-finding information. And then I think what you said, Tom, is really relevant about the veteran agent, who I think a lot of our amazing coaching clients have learned how to do this already and do it very effectively. But when you have so much information, you've got to tailor it to their needs.
Yes.
And so I think it's really understanding the motivation. It goes back to what are the most important aspects to it, and then just thinking through your listing presentation, your value prop, however you approach that, and thinking what solves that problem and keeping it isolated.
I think of the legendary coach and longtime client and friend, Eileen Rivera, who Long Beach, California, dominant in her marketplace, like controlled this geographic farm.
Yep.
She would show up like, remember, okay, so we're the same age. Remember Felix the cat?
Yes, of course.
And remember Felix's bag
His
of
magic
tricks?
bag,
Right? So she'd be on an appointment and she'd be asking you questions. And then she would go, oh, hold on 1 second. Like this? And they'd be like, oh, that's exactly what I'm looking for. She's like, and then it's almost like it's not a presentation for her, it's a dance. Right? Absolutely. She has the ability to essentially annihilate every objection that person would have for not listing the home with her in her bag of tricks. Yeah. But if she shows up and just goes like this, boom, and this is what the woman I was referring to, what she did. She here is everything from the beginning of, they used to call it death insurance, and now they call it life insurance. And I'm like, I don't need any of this.
Yeah.
I just need insurance.
I love that you just brought that up, because it speaks to an oversimplification of presenting. People think, oh, if I just say these 3 things, then I'm going to get the deal. It's not.
Never.
It's this beautiful alchemy of taking what you know and what you've learned and then employing it and delivering it right in that moment. There is an art to presenting, and that art takes place in your delivery. And the way that the two of you just were kind of ping-ponging back and forth, really settled for me in my heart and my mind with one specific goal. And that is, you have to know who you are and how you can be of service, in addition to finding out what they need. Because what they say that they need, that's not going to change. But when you're competing at a higher level, you have to figure out what it is that differentiates you so that you can get the win beyond not only what they said, but why you're the best competitor that they should hire for their team.
Yes.
If you are a newbie and you're working with first-time home buyers, your arguments and the way you present yourself as their partner to them in that situation will be very different.
Correct.
If I'm a top-producing agent going for super high-end listings in a luxury market.
Yes.
Arguments are different. Intention is different. Energy is different. So there's a craft that goes along with the case development.
Absolutely.
So what do you say to the person that's so overly pathos? I think of one client in particular he is such a good storyteller that he has case study after case study after case study in the form of a story about, oh, let me explain another property I sold just like yours. It also had, and then what we did, and therefore, and we got them highest price sale ever. And I'm giving how much he does the story, like I'm giving it that much. It's beautiful when he does it. But if it's in front of somebody that is super logical, right? There's a side of an element of a logical person will go, I understand, but I just didn't need all the hoopla in the middle. How do you help that person? Because we have a lot of beautiful storytellers, very persuasive storytellers. And then we have a lot of people, like I think about Kirk Kessel and Dwayne Carpenter, who you work with, and one of my closest friends on the planet. Kirk is all pathos.
Yep.
He is stories and examples, and he's 48 years in the business. He sold every house in his town probably twice. And his partner, Dwayne, is all logic, all numbers.
That's great
and
that they're
the
partners.
two of them as a balance is magical. But what if I don't have a partner like that? How do I learn that skill, those other forms of communication, so I can give a whole presentation and really dance? And I like the alchemy metaphor as example. That was good. How do I do that?
You have to want to.
Yeah.
So when I work with some people that are very pathos, they're like, that's who I am. That's who I am. They either like me or they don't. It might be the same person who says, I don't get it. I don't understand why they picked me over somebody else. Well, we don't know how the other person presented. You're competing in a vacuum of your own experience.
Yeah.
So
Your value proposition, I sell the homes of people who like pathos personalities.
right. Like,
Do you like storytelling?
And I'm
I'm your agent, right?
Yes.
We don't know.
Yeah, that would be nice, but that's not how
why
it
I
works.
try to get people to understand is that you have the balance.
Yes.
My coaching tip would probably be if you read the room and who's in the room, what kinds of questions are they asking? And I can find that out when I give them. I always say, if I had a magic wand and I gave it to you for this one thing,
Yeah.
how would you use the magic wand?
Yeah.
And then, they'll typically tell you what's important. Like, no, there's no limit. Use your imagination.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, Tom, the best experience that people are going to have. And what does that feel like?
Yes.
And what does that look like? Or what does it sound like? And then they'll tell you how, with their answer, it gives you some tune in
Yes.
as to
Yes.
how to best be of service from that perspective.
It's so interesting that Monroe's 5-set sequence starts with awareness.
Yeah.
And I think every presenter, if you're in a sales situation, if you're trying to convince your 17-year-old to do their homework, it's a presentation. Someone's going to say yes or someone's going to say no, internally or externally, letting you know or not. But I think it all starts with awareness. And I think what I loved about this book and doing the Hell Week the Hell Night, and being a part of that experience, even though you and I got to be like Paula Abdul and what's his face as
Simon.
the judges. What I loved was watching as I would get somebody up on stage and watching them present from the first time to the second time.
Yeah.
Awareness is everything. Awareness of how you show up, of your posture, the way you position yourself, the way you communicate, the way you talk, the way you gesture. It is everything, which leads me to, I think, the last big point. What Ron Arden, who, we both know, one of my very first speech coaches, the first time I hired this guy, I told you this story. He said, Tom, send me, I'm dating myself, a VHS. He didn't say beta, I'm not that old. Send me a VHS of you presenting on stage. And I was like, I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm just going because you helped Brian Tracy become great. And then I thought, well, of course, if he doesn't watch and observe what I'm doing, how could he possibly know? Otherwise, he's just going to give me sort of a set bunch of guidelines, and you should open this way, and you should, give the audience and some of those things. But none of that made sense until he watched. And when he watched me present early, he was like, oh, it was bad. I was horrible.
I don't think you were horrible.
Oh, no. On a scale from 1 to 10, I was like a minus 40. But I needed the awareness from someone at his level, at your level, to realize what was possible. But you can't get there unless you film yourself.
And the specific nature of what you're asking for.
Yes.
You don't go to a keynote speech coach to
No.
help you with your
No.
sales presentations.
No.
And that's really where I've defined myself. This is my niche, my lane, if you will.
Yes.
I only work with people whose livelihoods are dependent on their ability to build and deliver a persuasive presentation that drives conversion.
Yes.
That's what I do.
Yes.
So I'm not going to give them how to wow an audience and get a standing ovation. It's not applicable to the scenario that they're working under.
No.
And what I love about working with top producers and working with your team, because they're all amazing.
Yes. Thank you.
And also at the breaks, they would be like, I know this. And I would constantly say, even though we know, it's not just what you do with what you know, it's how you execute
Yes.
on what you know
Yes.
in the moments that it matters with the greatest amount of consistency. And that's the rub. How do you get to go from I know to doing it consistently? And that just takes the practice and the workshop and the coaching. We all know if you hit the perfect 3-pointer, you're going to be a successful basketball player. But I know, but do you do it?
But how many 3-pointers did you have to shoot before you got that
How
moment?
much did you practice? How did you work on it? There's a gap between what we know and execution.
I also think there's an element of being aware of where are you dominant? Are you logos, pathos, ethos? I find that most people, and you can correct me if this is mistaken, are either dominant logos or pathos. I don't know if you find, is it all three? Okay, it is all three. See, awareness is happening right now on camera.
Yes. But if they were just one or the other, what was your point?
Well, so if like logos is certainly my dominant side, and if I'm honest and I analyze like preparing for a talk, I tend to give too much information. If I pull at the okay, I always give too much. Thank you. Is that better, Tom?
You, yes.
I tend to tell partial truth. I always give too much information.
Yes. People's heads always hurt
They
after
do.
you get off stage.
If I'm reflective of why do I do that, it typically stems from a sense of, well, I don't want to fail to give them what they needed to build the understanding, and I think what has to happen is I, knowing that I'm dominant in this way, having awareness to the issue, have to be more deliberate in terms of, okay, I've got to be clear on my one purpose. What's the real reason we're here together today? And ultimately that purpose is for their decision, not mine. And what is the only information that is going to allow them to have what they need to make an informed choice to move forward? Nothing else. Everything else is extraneous. Let it go. And I keep thinking of this quote. I can't remember exactly. It was a Renaissance artist who said it, and I'm going to butcher it. It was beautiful, but it was something to the tune of perfection isn't achieved when there's nothing left to be added, but when nothing else can be removed or pruned. And it's this idea of how do I get rid of anything that's unnecessary to build the argument? And the only way I do that is have a clear understanding of who I'm talking to and have a clear understanding of what I want them to do next or what it is that happens next.
May I share when we did the brainstorming together?
Yes.
And you were writing up on the wall and we ran everybody through the so what test?
Oh, you mean when I said, hey, Terry, will you help us with this presentation? And you basically took my presentation and threw it in the trash?
I did not.
That moment?
No. She threw it on the floor.
I didn't. It was on the wall.
I watched the slides, the paper on the
I
wall.
did.
I
was
am
there.
so coachable. I was like, yes, Terry, help me get better. Let's go. You're like, okay, here's the 5 things. Now, show me where they're.
Just
we're
show them
like,
where they go.
that was
And
brutal.
you threw them away. I didn't throw them away.
You did. You were
Right?
like balling
Good
them
job,
up and
coach.
making a point. I
Yes,
was there.
Yes.
You threw them away. I didn't throw. I'm like, do you think that's compelling? And you were like, no, it's gone. You're the one. You murdered it.
But there is such thank you. Yes, thank you, Coach. There is a great insight here for everybody. When was the last time you went through your entire presentation, all your materials, all your slides, and asked yourself, is this relevant today?
Yeah.
Right. And maybe just maybe every presentation you go into is who am I presenting to? And if I don't know, you bring it all. Felix the bag of tricks. Right.
Yes.
Versus, hey, the baseline of what I need to understand to be able to help somebody move forward is this. Everything else is designed to support a case or give an example or be persuasive based on their modality, how they make decisions, what's right for them.
And there's always pressure.
Yes.
The higher the more you want it, the higher the pressure. The more competitors that are going for the same listing, the greater the pressure. And so the last thing that always comes is like, how do you pull it together in those moments of execution? You get the butterflies, you're feeling nervous. I mean, even with the greatest of intentions, we've all had that moment where the word just like flies out of your head. You're like, wait, I have practiced this. I have done this a million times. Or your head gets ahead of your lips. And you're like, wait, what was I just going to say?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know what else strikes me? Again, thinking about the ethos, pathos, logos, and knowing that everybody is dominant in some way. It will be my nature to think of being logos as my superpower as a presenter. So if I feel like I'm really, like there's a lot of pressure, I really need to win this appointment, my natural instinct will be to go with my strengths. And that will be to the detriment of understanding and reading the room.
I love that. That was
so
a
I think I have to be
beautiful
much more aware of that.
self-reflection.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was my logos. It
was-
allowed me to have that reflection.
Yes. And my pathos is saying, why are we filming this show in my grandmother's house?
Your grandmother's beach
Because-
condo.
Yes,
We're-
exactly.
Sharing-
Someone is going to be commenting on the salmon.
It's like I'm not even wearing a jacket. I'm like doing this
just
duotone
blend
thing.
it in. All right, so I'm going to make a strong recommendation if you have not bought a copy of this book. Highly recommend it. If you get a chance to ever work with Terry, Terry's about to go work with about 2,500 of my best clients here in Orlando, in case you're wondering where we are. And really it's this unpacked and more. So Terry, thank you all. Thank you for what you do for us.
Thank you.
Thank you for all of our speakers and presenters.
It is a privilege
There's
to work
so
with you
much,
and your team.
You're very
You're
kind.
all lovely
You're
humans.
We're very coachable.
You are very coachable.
As you saw. Okay, this is all garbage. Okay, here's what we're going to do now. And by the way, when we did that, it had a massive impact on our results.
It did.
We did more in less time. And isn't that the game? Like, how do I do more in less time? Like, really? It's knowing your audience. It's creating the awareness. It's understanding the needs. It's, it's all of that and more. So very, very powerful. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Let me know in the comments, what will you do to improve the quality of your presentation? How will you create more awareness? Will you film yourself and actually watch it? If you do, get alcohol. It makes it easier. I'm kidding. Don't do that. All right. Thank you for being on the show. And thank you for watching the show. We'll see you soon.